Thank you, everybody. It's good to see everyone here this morning. What I've been doing the past several talks, some with some gaps in there, but basically focusing on this question of how do we improve our Zazen. So that's a kind of a I say that with some reluctance to say that we can improve our Zazen, but I think we can, doing certain things. There's certain things we can do personally that can help us to improve. And so far I've been talking about mainly physical things like exercise and diet and chant. The last time I think was about chanting and things like that. This time I want to move into the realm of relationship in terms of family and harmony, finding harmony in the family. So this moves us in a kind of a different direction of, we tend to, when we think about Zazen in particular, seated meditation, we're thinking about, well, how do I do it? And the question that comes up for most people is, well, I must do, what can I do to improve it? Has to do with my own physical body. That's why I mentioned yoga too. And all of those things are important for sure. But we don't often think of that in terms of our familial relationships. And I'm not speaking as an expert here on finding harmony in the family, but I'm just raising it as something that we need to pay attention to, because if those relationships in our family are going well, our Zazen actually will go well too. And we come we come to a tradition. Zen is a tradition of leaving the family. That's how the Buddha dealt with his issues, right? He left home. And so this is an interesting thing that I think that most of us are grappling with. Most of us are not home leavers, and I myself, I have a family that I'm raising. So this question comes up for me: how do we integrate our practice with our family? How do we, or maybe not that, but how do we harmonize with our family? So that's kind of what I want to just bring up. I want to ask some questions to help stimulate discussion just at the start, and then offer a couple of remarks, and then open it up for discussion. All right, that's kind of my plan for this morning. So some questions. And no, we can, whether you have children or not have children, we all have parents. Maybe they're still here, maybe they're not. But in either case, it doesn't matter, because we are so conditioned by our family, our parents especially. And I was sharing with Shinkyu in the intro to Zen yesterday how much I didn't realize it, how much my mother influences me and the way that I see the world. And that really became apparent to me with my first child, and the things that were going on. And all of a sudden, it was like my mother was right in my face. Not literally, but almost literally. Like I was seeing through her eyes, I was hearing with her ears, I was speaking with her tongue, on as far as what to do with this, with my newborn son. Like, oh, and I couldn't, and thanks to the practice, I can see, oh, this is my mother's response to these situations. This is probably how she dealt with me when I was growing up in some way, and then I've forgotten, but my body remembered. So we can't, even if our parents are not physically present, they're still in us. So in Zen, we talk about two kinds of home leaving. There's the home leaving with the body, right? You physically become a home leaver. That's what being a priest is also called. It's not actually being a priest. It's called, the ceremony is called Shukkei Tokudo, home leaving. ceremony. Shukkei means to leave home. So there's leaving with the body, but then there's also leaving home with the mind. And I think that's something that any of us can, and actually really, that's where the real practice is, because even if you leave home with the body, you don't necessarily leave home with the mind. Just like my mom was right there in my face, for better or for worse. So I think I guess the thing that I want to circle around is how much the family either cultivates in us a sense of belonging to the big world around us, or doesn't cultivate that. You know, it's a what do you call spectrum? Yeah. See, on the one end, it's like this. Okay, they're really working on it. The other hand, they're not doing anything. But somewhere in between. But this, I think, the sense of cultivating a sense of belonging is the potential role of the family. And I think it's the traditional role of the family, as well as the spiritual community, is this that foster a sense of belonging to the world. So the questions I'm asking is that how can, now if you don't have children, this might be a different kind of question, but how can you encourage your children to ask questions and reflect on their own existence and place in the universe, right? Or you could, if you don't have kids, maybe ask that for yourself. How do you feel about your own existence? Where does your sense of belonging come from? What conversations about the mysteries of life and the cosmos can you ask that may spark curiosity and awe? That's just not just for children, but maybe your parents. It's tricky with parents because it's a different kind of role, but still the question I think is important to consider. How do we talk about awe, like the awesomeness of being alive within a family context? Or how can you create a safe space to explore thoughts and feelings about belonging and existence? How can you create that safe space so that there's the questions can come up? Or this last one, what stories or metaphors can you use to convey the vastness and interconnectedness of the universe to your family or within your family? So anyways, those are some possible questions to bring up. I'd love to hear what people have to say, but let me share two stories. The first is one that my teacher shared with me, and whether it's really happened or not, I'm not sure, but she's told me the story. When I first came to meditation, well, let me back up a second and just say, for me, coming to Zazen, when I first came to Zazen, I realized it's okay to sit in silence. I was completely captivated by that because I didn't come from a family that really respected silence at all. We're very loud, and I suspect that's a lot for many of us. We come here because there's just so much. If it's not the verbal, auditory stuff that really kind of overstimulates, it's maybe even just our mind. But in any case, for me, it was really a profound thing to see that there's a space for me to sit in silence. So when I first met my teacher, I was just so grateful that I could sit and nobody was going to say anything to me. Nobody was going to tell me what to do. Well, my teacher did say some things. She did share, like, this is how you sit. And then she shared some instructions on, just orientation. And one of the things she shared was this story. She said that an American went to a Zen temple in Japan to practice, and he stayed there for about 3 months. And he really liked the practice. He'd been there for a while then, and he woke up early in the morning, sat Zazen, cleaned the temple, helped clean the temple, worked with all the monks, chanted with the monks, ate with the monks, cooked, gardened, all those things. And he said at the end of his 3-month stay, he said, he went to the head monk and he asked the head monk, how do you become a member of this organization? And the head monk took his hand and scratched his head on the other side, indicating confusion. How do you become a member? And the head monk responded, how does a cloud become a member of the sky? Right? And how does a cloud become a member of the sky? In other words, it's your birthright. We're not members of a particular, that's a small kind of membership. Right? We have members here, that's okay, I don't want to put that down at all. But the insight that we're aiming for is that we belong because we're here. We have existence. That's the foundational membership in the universe. We belong because we are here. We're alive. If you're here, you belong. It's simple. It's that simple. And I don't just mean here in this building. I mean anywhere you go. That sense of belonging. And I think that in a family, that's what we want to cultivate, is that sense of belonging. But oftentimes a family doesn't do that. It's like you have to do something in particular in order to make you feel worthy of their love. That might be for some people, so just something to think about. What is it that helps us to feel a sense of belonging, and how can we communicate that with our loved ones, that they belong, that they're and I'm not an expert at this at all. I'm just kind of thinking about my own experiences in family life and how to work this out. But I feel like that sense of belonging is really important. The second story is maybe one that you've heard before. Some of you have been here, who have been around, may have heard this before. And this is the story of Bodhidharma. So when Zen moves from India to China, it goes that there was this monk named Bodhidharma who was an Indian monk, and in his old age, and he's in his 60s, his teacher tells him go to China and spread the Dharma there. So what does he do? He goes and sits in a cave. It's not a good place for spreading the Dharma. But somehow he got a reputation for sitting in a cave. And there was an emperor. The emperor at the time, Emperor Wu, he was a devout Buddhist. So Buddhism had already been in China before Bodhidharma entered. Emperor Wu was putting money towards erecting temples. He was helping monks and nuns to ordain and all this. And he had been doing a lot, putting a lot of his energy and time into Buddhism. And he'd heard about this monk, Bodhidharma, that came from India, and being the emperor, wielding a lot of power, he wanted to see the monk and ask him some questions about the Dharma. So Bodhidharma agrees to meet with him, and Emperor Wu asks him, can you tell me what's the highest meaning of the Noble Truths? And Bodhidharma says, empty. There's nothing holy about them. That's a really profound thing to say about a religion. There's nothing holy. You'd think the exact opposite. He wanted to get something big from Bodhidharma, and he just gets the rug pulled out from underneath him. And then the second question he asks him is, well, first of all, he's wondering, do I got the right guy here? Is this the person that I really requested? Because he doesn't seem to know anything. He didn't give me the answer I was looking for. So he comes out, who is it that's standing here before me? And he throws another one at him. He says, I don't know. that's another really powerful response to an emperor. And this ability to say, that ability to say, I don't know who I am. Well, maybe none of us will ever be in the position of Bodhidharma. We're probably not going to be in front of the president and him asking us a really deep spiritual question. And then him retorting, well, who are you? And you said, we're probably not going to be in that situation. But we are in that situation anyways, in our life all the time, because we're constantly trying to make a name for ourselves in some form through fame and gain. Those are the two ones that Dogen always brought up, as fame and gain, that we want to make. We're all caught by it to some degree. And to some degree, we need to have some kind of recognition for what we do. We desire stuff. There's nothing wrong with those things. I don't want to shame. I'm not bringing any shame there. But I think the problem comes, at least for me, what I noticed in myself, and I think it may be true for at least some of you, is the pushing on our children of making a name for yourself at the expense of really cultivating that sense of belonging, right? So Bodhidharma had so much confidence in himself that he could say to an emperor, I don't know who I am. That required a tremendous amount of self-confidence to be able to say that, but to also know it about himself. Like, yeah, I'm Bodhidharma, I come from India, but I don't really know who I am. Whereas what we see often in our culture is this vying for position and power. So this is an opposite orientation. What we call being nobody, going nowhere, right? So that's the other half of the equation. It's the only way you can be somebody and go somewhere is if you're okay with being nobody and going nowhere. And that's what just turned my world upside down when my teacher was telling me this. Being nobody, going nowhere? That was the opposite message that I was getting from my family, from my society, from my schooling. It's like everybody's telling me I gotta be somebody and I gotta go somewhere, and that makes me belong. But Zen is saying our belonging comes from the fact of our existence. And when we sit Zazen, we're just affirming that. And we belong because we're here, because we're breathing. And the only thing that takes that away is death. The universe gives it to us, and the universe takes it away. But even that, we're still part of this great universe, even through death. Right? Our karma still exists, and even materially, we're still here. So those are just some initial thoughts on that, and I want to open this up to hear from you guys. Just to have I have a limited experience around this sense of how do we cultivate harmony in the family. I just wanted to give some introductory thoughts on it and open up for your thoughts on this and bring forth your wisdom. Thank you.
I could start.
Yeah, please.
Break the silence. I'm thinking about, I've got just two things. I was thinking about how you say that your family is a very loud family, boisterous. Now we know, not everyone knows, but my middle brother is autistic to the point where he doesn't really talk much. So,
yeah.
I'm always researching this karma, my old karma, seeing how this has affected my life. Thinking back on the way my home life was, it's like a museum silence there. Because you don't have, autistic people, some of them tend to really be sensitive to noise. So if you've got like a family that's like, blah, blah, that's gonna cause really big problems. So I grew up in a place that's quiet like this. I'd walk home and be like this. When you would walk in. My parents would eventually come in and turn the TV on, and we'd have normal conversations and dinners and stuff. But I took that type of silence with me. So people like my apartment, the before this would be like a monastery. It'd be, you come home after work, it sounded like this. And I had an ex for my long-term ex. She was the type of person that would like find people who were in trouble and then bring them into this, she called it like the monastery, like the healing place, because it's just different than any, you know how you say you come here and it's just like, there's just not a lot of things that are required of you. I mean, there are, but it's like a different relationship with just life and sound and what's expected of you. I cultivated that apparently just from my own being, not trying to. So like talking about family and the space for that. So I had my son, he grew up in this quiet as well. And kind of a way I cultivated or tried to cultivate like a sense of awe, or even just the ability to ask questions, was to just like I love to answer questions. I don't know if you know this about me. I can just go and go and go. So there are a lot of people, though, I know from meeting people who have troubled lives or just normal lives, they have some parents who are like, I don't want to hear any questions. This is what it is, don't ask any more questions. I've never been like that in my life. I'm like, give me questions to answer. I love it. The opposite of that, though, is kind of like the Bodhidharma, or if I don't know something, I just don't know. I know a lot of people will be like, "Oh, let's fill in an answer," even if I have no idea what I'm talking about. Right. And then the third thing with me as well, sometimes I'll just say something that I really like, "Is that right?" I'm like, I actually don't know. We're gonna have to find out. I might have just been making this up completely. So like, I have the ability to go back and be like, hey, I was just talking a bunch of nonsense. So this is the type of thing I do with my son. So hopefully for him, never feel scared to ask a question, instill that curiosity, like if we don't know, let's get on the internet, let's get in a book, let's do something, we'll find the answer together, that type of thing. It's really, for me, it's always about that emotional part of the question. You tend to think of questions as this static thing that doesn't really have any emotional aspect to it. But bring a question up to someone and be like, I just don't know this. That's kind of embarrassing, right? Or it could be a source of shame, or it could be, whatever. Just try to be silent like this place, like a mirror for people. Thank you. Thank you for your question. So thank you for letting me answer the question.
Yeah.
Just to bring up another side of the intersection between family and this practice. Unlike, other religions in the United States, or the Christian religion, a lot of times people who come here come without, family with them.
Exactly. Yeah.
And, sometimes coming to this practice creates a tension within the family. People who have a different viewpoint, people who don't understand it, and that sort of thing. And, sometimes I think that causes people to come and then go away.
Yeah, exactly.
And, I just raise this as kind of an open question as to what we can do in our practice to, alleviate that.
That's a great question. Yeah. I think you're right. So your comment is that a lot of times people come here without their family, and then that itself, well, there's already the tension there in the family, but that just makes it explicit.
Yeah, and sometimes it's, it's not a tension that is overt until, somebody really gets into the practice. I mean, there's all sorts of different flavors. I mean, I know that, Sarah has had a little bit of this, with some in-laws, differences, and worked through it. So maybe you have some insights.
I don't know. I mean, it's obviously dependent, like you were saying, on the family, the situation. I don't have an answer. I don't know. you know, I'm happy my situation worked out the way that it did, and it is an opportunity for all, you know, for all kinds of dialogue and discussion, and in my case, my family members in particular, it was an opportunity for them to kind of evolve their views on the issue. Like, nobody's changed their views of like their worldview and how our own place in it, but when it comes to relating to each other, it was a good opportunity to end it well. But yeah, I mean, that was just, maybe there's some religious trauma happening in the family, and maybe that's the cause of it, or, you know, and I don't know, it's just one of those things where you just gotta put one foot in front of the other, and in good faith, and as long as you're working from a place of curiosity and compassion, as much as you can't control what the other person is going to do, say, or respond, but that's really all you can do for yourself on your side of it.
You know, where does, you know, how about like the sense of belonging? Where does, so if somebody does something different that's kind of different from what the family norms are, there may be a questioning of belonging there. You know, so I'm curious, like, how does that, so you can try to, I guess you can try to explain yourself, but that doesn't always go very far. But how to instill that sense, like, you know, I'm gonna do, again, I don't have the answer here, but I'm gonna do this, but you guys belong anyways, and you know, coming from a place of belonging in doing that versus coming up from a place of separation, you know?
And I was just listening to you talk, and I think it's interesting as like parallels, because, you know, I have kids, many people in the Sangha do not have kids, and again, there's all these different situations, like maybe growing up your home life wasn't so great, you know, maybe, right. You know, everybody is coming out of a family dynamic where there were certain needs that just weren't met, you know, and our parents did the best they could, you know, and you have to work through that yourself. But like when it comes to a sense of belonging, I see parallels between raising my kids, my own Zen practice, and how there's really no separation, and more specifically, what I try to do, and for me, what's like the crux of my practice, what I try to do for myself and my kids is to, one, no matter what your experience is, it's valid, because it's happening. It might not be in your best interest, like in the long term, or maybe even the short term, but I see it, it's happening, and I'm gonna acknowledge it. And that would be the first step. And doing that with my kids, but also doing it with myself. Like if I'm sitting on the cushion and I'm having a not so great day, or I'm having an experience or a thought or a feeling that I habitually maybe would have some kind of sense of shame around or whatever, I can stop. I can acknowledge all of it. I can acknowledge the feeling that initially came up, the shame that came after, and I can just do the second step, which is bring some mindfulness and compassion to it, so that we're holding it differently. And we can't, and I can't, my kids can only see this if I model it for them, with them, is like, I can see you're super frustrated right now, and I get it, I get why you are, but let's just take a moment and hold this as much as we can in the moment, you know, because we can't transform that and let it have a life of its own and resolve itself, or some kind of revolution, until we're able to hold it and give it space and give it compassion. And if we're able to acknowledge all parts of ourselves, then to me, in my experience, that's the biggest sense of belonging I can give to my kids, for myself. And if we're moving in the world from that, it's a heck of a lot better than not doing that, I can tell you that.
This is another side of the issue of you know, the issue of a person who's practicing when the rest of the family is not coming here, is that I see many examples of where the family around benefits from it. And a lot of times the family around will recognize that, that the benefits the practice had for the whole family.
Yeah, that's a great point. Yeah, I don't know, Diane, you want to say that?
Yeah, just not to take away anything from what's been said there, it's just kind of a different tack listening to what you were saying, being in a very small family right now, which is me and Rocky, and that's my dog. And so I do try to create harmony and belonging there, for sure. But it's interesting though, I think at this time in my life, that idea of family is more enlarged. I mean, I'm certainly still thinking of my nuclear family and family, as I was an adult, but I was reading a book yesterday and I kind of forget the title, but it's something about conversation as spiritual practice. And just that we bring that, we can bring that sense of belonging, that sense of community in every conversation, wherever we go. So that, I don't know, it's just a good reminder that I have a bigger sense of family.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Thanks, Diane, and everybody. I have something to add. I love harmony. I think it's very important. As far as my family goes, I treat it as like those who are around me, my neighbors or the people I live with, in whatever setting I'm at. One of the greatest things I've been able to do to have an effect on harmony is to clean the toilet. That's literally one of the most important things ever, and I'll tell you, the effect it has is profound.
I believe it. I believe it.
When I was at the Sarpy County Jail, there was about 60 or 70 of us in there. And I was in there for like 60 days. When I showed up, the bathrooms were so horrendous. There was mold growing on the, all over the shower stalls. And for whatever reason, I had this feeling of responsibility to take initiative and, for no reason, scrub and clean the bathroom and be the bathroom guy. And the whole demeanor of the entire 60 to 70 human beings changed. And it was just crazy. And they said, Benji, I just love it when you change the bathroom. Because people just seemed like it really had a profound effect. So cleaning the bathroom, if that's one thing I can add, is just clean the bathroom. And you'll be amazed by it.
Awesome. Awesome. Yes. I concur 100%. Cleaning up, absolutely. Yeah.
Can I share?
Yeah.
So when I think about family, I remember what Thich Nhat Hanh had said about relationships. And I always think it's very interesting that they ask like these celibate monastics, like, how do you handle relationships? And what he said actually was pretty profound. He said, instead of coming at it of a place of like, do I love this person or not? Do they love me or not? It's, do I understand them? You might not necessarily agree with them. Like, for example, my parents are like on the very other side of the political spectrum. They're like, they love riding motorcycles, they like carrying guns. And while I don't necessarily agree with that, like I understand their reasoning behind it, and feeling like a sense of safety and, protecting their own. Like I understand that and I still love them, but it's not like necessarily agreeing. In my work as a bereavement coordinator, I deal with the bereaved often, and they always have a lot of sense of like what didn't go right, especially when it's that acute grieving period. And I think that's the nature of mind. Like the neuroscience says, we tend to stick to those like bad memories or bad experiences for a while. It's like Velcro, and all the good stuff that happens, it's like Teflon. But your entire relationship probably had 99% good. It's just remember to bring those to mind. And then the other thing, relating this back to practice, I come to practice with whatever comes with us, right? You have all of the generations behind you, you have your interpersonal issues, and that all sits with you on the cushion. And the best thing that I've done with that is like have a sense of wonder about it instead of like telling a story about how good or bad whatever it is. So, sitting down and like remembering like, if I had an argument with my husband or, whatever it is, instead of like going down that rabbit hole and continuing that thought process, it's like, oh, that's interesting. I wonder what that's about. So coming to understand it.
Mm,
And then, with that, you come to bring that out into the practice. Like when you're actually having like a disagreement, it's like, oh, I wonder what that is. Like,
mm,
am I not understanding what's
mm,
going on? So just having that sense of wonder and appreciation for like, what is this that's coming
mm,
up?
wonderful. Yeah, thank you, Jason. Understand, that's a huge one. I love that. I'm glad you brought in Thich Nhat Hanh's response. That's great. Understanding, having some degree of understanding is really, I can't say that I always do. Personally, but that's a good one to keep in mind. Like, do I understand where this person is coming from, even if I disagree with them? And then the sense of wonder, curiosity maybe, or wonder about why am I getting so upset about X, Y, or Z? Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
Yes.
So I had the experience of a home leaving and a home embracing kind of at the same time. It was just basically a few weeks after I decided to stop speaking with my parents that we found out that my partner was pregnant.
Wow.
So it was obviously like an emotionally complicated time, and that's not all unpacked or resolved yet. But I know that for me, in large measure, it was having spent a long time trying to work through my issues with my family and different contexts with different word choice and not getting anywhere with it, and realizing that like at some point the thing that I didn't want to face and couldn't avoid anymore is, well, either I preserve this or I leave, and I'm not being offered another choice. And at some point this behavior is not fair to me, to my partner, to any children that we would have. I don't want them to deal with it, and so I need to step away. And once I did that, and a little bit of time had passed, seeing how much, tying this back to Zazen, when I sat on the cushion, memories or insights that like I hadn't wanted to deal with for potentially even, decades, started to come to the surface, and I could get that resolved. And I really saw like how much I had been pulled in two different directions. I was trying to be two different people in these contexts. And once I had just made a decision, then the energy that I didn't want to hold on to anymore could start to come up, and I could let go of that as well, because I was no longer in the context where that behavior made sense as a way to be. And so I'm just trying to honor that process right now for myself and lean into like being the person I want to be for, myself and the family that I am bringing up now, rather than trying to be the person I was trying to protect in my old context.
So what happened when did you reach out to your family once you found out you had a child on the way, or?
So I'm still speaking with my dad's parents. We actually just had dinner with them last night, and so, and to a certain extent, one of my dad's younger brothers and his family, we still speak with. So word passed through the grapevine very quickly, obviously, but I have not seen or spoken with my parents. They have not met my daughter yet. Obviously that can be hard, but it also still feels like the right decision.
But I
be able to share?
Yeah, please.
Okay, so there's a lot of layers to my family dynamic, so I'll try to get through it as efficiently and as make sense as I can. So basically, going back to like what Sarah was saying, some parents try their best, they really do their best, but my parents did a great job with me, but what I was missing growing up was emotional validation, and that left me like feeling like very, very alone a lot of the time. So I never felt like I belonged like anywhere. For like my first like 25 years of my life, like I was looking for like my home, like where I belonged. Like I'll find a community, kind of sit there, something would happen, I'd have to like leave, and then I'd be like, oh, guess that wasn't my home after all. Just like looking for this place that I belong. It was really weird. I was reading like escapism, like reading a lot of books, like watching a lot of movies and stuff. And I just didn't want to like be like here, I guess. And that was like really hard. And growing up and like coming out of that, like I did really realize that just like by being here and like being alive, like that is like enough. Like, you know, like I belong wherever I go because like I am here, I'm alive, whatever. Something about like raising kids, I guess, is that a lot of kids like will come at you with their problems. What they want after they talk to you about their problems is like, as if you guys were like a newspaper editor and like a headliner, you want to like, come up with like a headline for everything they just told you to like validate them. If that makes sense, like kind of like they give you all the information, then you sum it up for them. Instead of like my mom who would be like, well, everyone goes through that, or like, you know, brace up by your bootstraps, things like that. You just kind of want to like let them know that you understand like what they just told you, and then like validate that like clearly. That's like all they ever want. That's all I ever really wanted, I guess. So yeah, a lot to learn there from family dynamics. So emotional support, I guess, is like very important in raising a family. At least that's my experience. So.
Yeah, thank you.
Question.
Yeah.
In the Dr. talk, you had mentioned, I don't remember how you phrased it exactly, but like being able to raise questions about connecting to that sense of awe,
Yes.
wonder, or like being able to use metaphors or stories. Like how do you, like do you have any strategies for doing that, or like how do you, because I feel like it's hard to just like slip it into.
Right, yeah. Like how do you bring in that sense of awe? Yeah, that's and that's something it's a preoccupation for me. It really is, and I think part of it, and this is, I want to bring this up in a future talk too, but part of the issue, and I'm convinced part of the issue of our world is that we're beyond, we don't have the mythology anymore that we used to, and every culture has a mythology, a sense of who we are, that helps to explain who we are, where we come from, where we're going, what we're about. That's across cultures there's this mythology, and and we have that mythology as well in our culture, but it doesn't quite match with the reality of our situation in our life and what we know from science. Right, those are mismatched, and so the awe gets reduced to, I have to be either ignorant about what we know now, and like fit into the small little box, which just doesn't do it. It doesn't generate awe, or I've got to like, jettison completely all kinds of religion or spirituality in favor of a kind of maybe like a meaningless sense of like, well, this is information, right? Where I'm going with this is, I think we need to have both. We need to have the story that's coming to us from the universe itself, right? The universe is telling us a story now. We're waking up to this story of, wow, this whole world has been evolving for millions and billions of years, and we're the result of that. And oftentimes when that's presented scientifically, it's presented simply as a fact, as opposed to a story, as opposed to this is what's going on, and then we can begin to get a like the sense of the awesomeness of being alive. Right? So my feeling here is that we need to study what's going on and study it from the angle of mythology. And the way that I'm learning to do this is by studying people like Brian Swim, the way he's talked about the journey of the universe and our place in it. I think it's a compelling way of talking about the discoveries of science, but in a more spiritual way that we can embrace, that we can see ourselves as the awesome beings that we are, and just to educate ourselves on that. I'll give you a bit of the story. Here's a bit of the story. Starting with the beginning of the universe, right? This little point that nothing. The problem is, here's the problem, is that we see ourselves as outside of the story. Here's what's going on, and us human beings are out here. We're looking in. And I think one of the benefits of Zen practice is that it helps us to dissolve that subject-object. Here I am, the subject, here's the object over here, and I'm not part of it. Zen says, you're 100% part of this. You're part of this story. So here's the story, the beginning, right? Here's this universe opening up 14 billion years ago. There's this one, there's nothing that exists. And all of a sudden, out of this point that's smaller than the distance between my fingers right now, boom, right? Everything is expanding out. And this is where all these hydrogen atoms are made. And the interesting thing about this expansion at the beginning of time is that it happens at just the right rate. They say Stephen Hawking's determined that if the rate of expansion of the Big Bang was just a hair faster, then the universe would not have come out to be the way it is. And if it was just a hair slower, the same thing, it would have collapsed into a nothing. But the expansion rate, now we see if you look into a high-powered telescope, you can see galaxies expanding away from each other. That was a discovery 100 years ago. And we're just starting to get our minds wrapped around that. But what this means is that the world exists in this narrow band of just not too fast, not too slow, right? That is totally in alignment with the Buddhist teaching of the middle way. Not too fast, not too slow. We live in this, and if we can align ourselves with that, we're 100% in alignment with the Big Bang, right? That source, that's where we all come from. We wouldn't be around if that didn't happen, right? Things had to come about just right. So anyways, that's one way. I'm trying to understand this what's coming through, and then sharing it. That's my way.
I really like I love it when I hear anybody say they have a preoccupation with awe. I'm like, that's the way, yeah, that's the way. But I don't know, so when I'm talking to my kids, I really, as far as how from Zen practice, I really lean into beginner's mind, and I really lean into the presence of paying really close attention to something. And so I'll point out stuff that to my kids, and I'm like, how freaking odd is it that we don't remember anything from before we were born? How strange is that? Do you not find that strange? And they're like, that is kind of weird. And just really basic stuff that we all take for granted. Or I burned my finger and I had a big old blister and now it's all healed. But I'm like, I didn't think about any of that. I didn't say, okay, finger, now my body just did it. And then or I'll say if someone is going to have a baby and I'm just there isn't, it's science fiction, poof, there's a human, just out of thin air, how crazy is that? And they're just that's right,
Yeah.
So it's the I don't know, just repeatedly, just pointing out the obvious but also things that we just take totally for granted. Like, oh, it's just the way it is. I'm like, yeah, but how weird is that?
Right.
And by weird, I mean weird in the best sense of
Yes.
just like, how curious can we get about our human predicament and that we're all a part of this? And it's kind of wild, like it's a wild ride, and yeah.
Yeah, Dogen, I was reading yesterday in Uji says, we all understand that we don't doubt that, no, he says, we do not doubt the 12 hours of the day are real. Right? We don't doubt that, yet none of us understand it. We don't understand it. We don't doubt it, but we have no, and that's the thing, we don't understand it, and yet we gloss over that fact. We don't doubt it, but we have no comprehension of what's happening right now. We don't doubt it's happening, but we can't understand it.
And it doesn't have to be, it doesn't, on that note, I can see how that might actually give some people anxiety, like,
Right,
thank you.
but
what I'm trying to instill
absolutely.
in my kids is like, no, it's just, you can have fun with it, like,
And
it's,
anxiety is the other side of awe, right? It's
It can
just,
be,
we're just
yeah.
turning it around. And you actually need, like, that's part of the practice, is to turn that anxiety into awe. That's the transmutation of anxiety into awe. A good book to look at is called Finding Serenity in the Age of Anxiety. I found that really helpful, where it brings in this meditation meditate in a way that we can turn that anxiety is actually a positive thing, that we can use it to learn something from, and to parse out the 3 different kinds of anxiety that there are, and to cultivate what they call spiritual or existential anxiety. That's a good thing, that we want to think more about our mortality, and think more about the immenseness of the universe, or whatever floats your boat, whatever brings that awe up. We want to put that anxiety, as opposed to the anxiety of the mind spinning and shaming ourselves and blaming ourselves. That kind of anxiety is the kind of anxiety we want to transmute to the anxiety of, wow, this world is awesome, and I have I'm mortal. I want to do what I can.
and that you can still be playful in it, like you can still access that from, that playfulness that is so alive when you're a kid. It can get kind of tamped down, but like if you can kind of infuse that beginner's mind with a sense of playfulness, like I had no idea, and that's okay. Like neither does anybody. Like we're all in this together, and there's that belonging aspect of it too. Maybe
I hope that answers some of the things. I think this is a huge issue, and we got to keep on investigating it together. Yeah.
No, one way I've found to use science as a way of cultivating awe in my life, particularly in the context of family, which we were discussing here, is to think about evolution and the fact that we are all descended from some primordial protocellular organism or organisms, which means literally, and not theoretically, not virtually, literally, we are all family. All living beings on this planet, all life is family. I am literally distant cousin to the tree outside the window, the spider in the corner, let alone everybody in this room.
There we go. I want to end on that note right there. That's fantastic. Amen to that one. All right. Thank you all. Thanks so much for sharing your wisdom. I think it's an ongoing kind of exploration. I just encourage it to keep going. Thank you.